It was July 18, 1936. Spain, divided by class, by politics, and by fear, erupted into civil war. What began as a failed military uprising quickly turned into one of the most. Stood a quiet, calculating general, Francisco Franco. He was not the highest-ranking officer. He was not the most charismatic. But through patience, loyalty, and ruthlessness, he rose to command a nationalist rebellion that would crush a republic, defeat its ideals, and silence a nation for nearly 40 years. This is the story of Francisco Franco, the general who silenced Spain for a generation, a man whose victory in civil war led not to peace, but to repression, fear, and decades of isolation. Francisco Franco Bahamonde was born on December 4, 1892, in the naval town of Ferrol, in Galicia, a conservative, deeply Catholic region in northwest Spain. His father was a naval officer, unpredictable and distant. His mother was pious and strict. Franco grew up disciplined, reserved, and loyal to tradition, rejected from the Navy due to cutbacks. Franco joined the army instead, enrolling in the infantry academy in Toledo at age 14. By 17, he was posted to Morocco, where Spain was engaged in a colonial war against indigenous resistance. There, in the brutal landscape of the Rif Mountains, Franco proved himself. He was methodical, cautious, and ferociously dedicated. By age 33, he became the youngest general in Europe. The Moroccan campaign forged his worldview. Order over chaos, hierarchy over liberty, and violence, if necessary, as a tool of control. Back in Spain, Alfonso XIII abdicated, and the Second Spanish Republic was declared. Land reform, secularism, women's suffrage, and educational expansion marked the early years. On tradition, the church, the army, and landowners. Tensions deepened between right and left. Anarchists, socialists, communists, monarchists, and fascists all competed for Spain's soul. Franco, by then an influential general, disliked the Republic, but remained outwardly loyal in 1934. When a leftist uprising broke out in Asturias, Franco led the brutal suppression. Over 1,000 miners were killed. Torture and mass arrests followed. To the right, Franco became a hero. To the left, a symbol of military tyranny. 2 years later, Spain would fracture entirely. On July 17, 1936, a group of generals launched a military coup against the leftist Popular Front government. Franco, stationed in the Canary Islands, initially hesitated but quickly joined the plot. He flew to Spanish Morocco, took command of elite colonial troops, and began the march toward mainland Spain. The coup failed to seize the entire country. What followed was 3 years of civil war. Spain was split in two, the Republican side, composed of socialists, communists, anarchists, and liberals, and the nationalists, made up of monarchists. The military. Franco quickly emerged as the dominant figure among the nationalist generals. In September 1936, he was named Generalissimo Supreme Commander and Cauthelio, or leader. He was just for 3. The Spanish Civil War was not simply a battle for power. It was a clash of ideologies, fueled by fear and vengeance. Forces received support from Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, tanks, planes, and troops. Hitler's Luftwaffe tested new bombing strategies, including at Guernica in 1937, where an entire town was destroyed, later immortalized in Picasso's haunting painting. The replicants were supported by the Soviet Union and international brigades, volunteers from around the world who came to fight fascism. Franco waged a slow, methodical war. He favored siege and starvation over swift assaults. Cities like Madrid and Barcelona held out, but at great cost. And behind the front lines, terror reigned. In territories taken by the nationalists, thousands were executed, rounded up and shot often without trial. By 1939, Franco had triumphed. Madrid fell. The Republic collapsed. 500,000 people fled into exile. Another 100,000 would disappear into prisons or graves. Franco stood unchallenged. Spain had been silenced. On April 1, 1939, parties censored the press and banned labor unions. The constitution was scrapped. Elections disappeared. He ruled by decree, not as a president or king, but as Cauthelio of Spain by the grace of God. The Catholic Church regained its central place in Spanish life. Women were pushed out of public life and into traditional domestic roles. Franco styled his regime as a crusade, not just against communism, but against modernity itself. It was nationalist, authoritarian, Catholic, and anti-liberal. Opposition was not tolerated. The secret police monitored speech, writing, and even behavior. Tens of thousands of political prisoners filled jails and labor camps. Torture was common. Some were executed years after the war had ended. Entire regions like Catalonia and the Basque Country had their languages and cultures suppressed. Public use of minority languages was banned. Flags, books, and even names had to conform to a Castilian Spanish ideal. Franco called it unity. In reality, it was control. When World War II broke out, Franco declared Spain neutral. Though he openly sympathized with Hitler and Mussolini, he sent volunteers, the Blue Division, to fight alongside German troops on the Eastern Front, but he avoided full commitment by 1945. As the Axis powers fell, Franco was isolated. He had no allies. Rationing and poverty returned. Franco clung to power. The Cold War gave him a second life to the United States. Franco now seemed like a useful bulwark against communism. In the 1950s, Spain received economic aid and military agreements in exchange for allowing U.S. bases. Tourism and industries slowly revived the economy. But the repression never truly eased. The regime remained authoritarian. The press muzzled and political prisoners forgotten. Franco had built not a nation, but a cage. In 1969, Franco named his successor Prince Juan Carlos, the grandson of the deposed king. Too many. This was the clearest sign that Franco intended his dictatorship to outlive him. Spain would return to monarchy, but under Franco's design. But time was catching up on his final years. Franco grew frail and increasingly detached. Opposition movements re-emerged. Students, workers, even moderate conservatives quietly pushed for reform. Still, the state held firm. On November 20th, 1975, Francisco Franco died at age 82. He had ruled Spain for 36 years, longer than Mussolini, longer than Hitler, longer than any 20th century European dictator. Franco's death did not bring immediate revolution, but within months, the transition began. Juan Carlos, against expectations, led Spain toward democracy. Political parties were legalized. A new constitution was drafted. Free elections returned. The transition was not without pain or fear, but it held. Spain today is a parliamentary democracy, shaped in many ways by the very traumas it survived. But Franco's shadow lingers. Mass graves still dot the countryside. Thousands of victims of the Civil War and dictatorship remain unidentified. Until 2019, Franco's body lay in a grand basilica built with forced labor, the Valley of the Fallen. His exhumation sparked fierce debate about memory, justice, and forgetting. Francisco Franco did not simply win a war. He froze a society. He promised stability and gave silence. He preached unity and enforced fear. He ruled not through love or belief, but through control, tradition, and time. He survived every challenge, the war, the world's rejection, even history's condemnation by waiting, watching, and never letting go. And when he finally let go,